Strategies, we've got Brian Cochrane and Courtney. Don't actually have bios to them or anything we could do for them here. You probably know who they are. I will let them introduce themselves.
Thank you. So Anthony's a hard act to follow and it's fun restoration stuff. We're gonna do some very specific program stuff like how to get money out of the crap. And then hopefully after that really quick, I'm gonna be risky and do it live. And then I really want to talk about some of the monitoring work I've been doing since I got here in 2014 and see what that's telling us about the program and some of the assumptions we made when we set that program up in 1992,000. Those of you that were around that time, because I think it's pointing us towards some changes that we need to make. So I'm trying to spend 20 minutes ish on this and then jump into the monitoring and have a little more fun. So for starters, show of hands, who knows how to get money for CREP? Not bad. Who should know how to get money for CREP? Okay. And the rest of you get to learn. So Courtney has a new BMP, hedgerow planting. I'm using her dummy record. I'm in the production system.
Do you have a question for you like that?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Okay. Come on. There we go. Okay, that's better. So I am in the production system. I try to limit practice accounts in the production system because when I do a report, I have to weed out the garbage. But at any rate, for Courtney's hedgerow, we've selected CREP type, program type is CREP, so it now tells us we need more information. All of this happy contract stuff down here. And down under here, the system is looking for one of 4 kinds of EMPs. And if it finds it, it will put it under this primary planting. It's looking for a terrain forest buffer, hedgerow planting, wetland enhancement, free. So anyway, when I get this little arrow, we get to tell us the system when we put that planting in. Why is that important? It's important because when you ask for maintenance money, this is starting a clock ticking. So 5 years from this date, it's not going to allow you to ask for maintenance money. Okay, so we're going to add a new record. We're going to say it got planted Sunday. And we're going to say it's a 0.5 acre. Okay, notice what that did. It took the allowed maintenance rate of 2750 for 5 years and tells you now based on the acres have 1350 available. Right? So that needs to be there. And very important in these grids to do save changes. Otherwise, you get to do it again. So now up in the funding part of the grid, I'm on the funding tab in CPDS. You know how to get that one. I can now ask for money. Why do we ask for money? We ask for money in CREP because CREP is the only grant that I'm aware of that SCC offers, and Courtney will correct me, where we give you money for TA and you get a letter with all your grants that from our executive director says, you now have money, you are authorized to spend it. However, in the CREP cost share and maintenance part of the grant, you get a grant for no money. Which means you also don't have the piece of authorization that says you can now spend government funds. So if you try to spend money without a request and approval, you are spending government funds without authorization. If you're paying attention to the national news, people have done a lot of jail time for spending government funds without authorization. And we don't want to go there. So, and the reason we went to this in CREP is because there were, quite frankly, programs that were asking for the world at the beginning of the biennium and returning 75–80% of their funds. They're sitting on all of their funds back when funds were limited. They're less limited now, thank you. But we went to a system where let's forecast what we're doing in the next work season, kind of, because we kind of have a spring fall work season. And let's ask for those funds, get those put in the district grant. The approval process is the authorization to spend the funds. And now we can go ahead and do the work with the funds authorized before the work actually happens, which keeps us out of the auditor's bad list. Because our ability to spend money would get a lot less if we got on that bad list.
Keeps you from getting a nasty grant from me. I don't see your approval in here.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we want to do it before the work and make sure that the request date is before the receipt date. So how do we request? We can request two kinds. We can request maintenance and we can request cost share. So I'm going to grab cost share WSCC and make a request. I want to spend cost share to one. I want to spend $5,000. And I want to add a new record. And I want to spend maintenance. Maintenance, I can only spend a certain amount. I had whatever my maintenance amount said, was 1,300 something.
1350.
1,350, let's spend $25. Okay, notice. And again, save changes. Notice I now have a button that says prep off for each one. So I'm going to click on that. And it's going to give me a pop-up window. Tells me who it is. And now this was for maintenance, because notice the date of first planting is grayed out for cost share. This is a cost share request, so I don't care when it was planted, right? I do care what kind of cost share it is. So this box is live because I'm asking for the authorization to spend the cost share side of the funds. So is it beaver management? We have certain rules around that. Is it contingency funds? I keep money back because things happen on projects outside the maintenance window. Is it just the straight FSA cost share? FSA is paying their share, we're paying ours. Is it paying for mid-contract, or is it re-enrollment? Re-enrollment is getting less and less because FSA is not matching our re-enrollment. So I'm just going to say it is regular straight up cost share. And this is also important in the comments. My view of what's going on in your projects is through this system. And those projects I get out to visit every fall. That's it. So if there's nothing here, I know nothing about your project. So tell me a little bit about what's going on. And if it's something weird, definitely tell me something about what's going on, okay? So this was a, oops. Okay. Request. Oh, whoops, the contract number is required. Guess what? I didn't do something. I probably didn't save the contract number. So I get to go back. And I'm working on making this backwards. So if you enter it in the form, it'll go back into the record, but that's an update that is in progress. So I need to go back to my form. Yeah, it's there. What are you talking about? This is the fun of doing live updates.
Exactly.
Go next.
See our frustrations.
We did this, we and one other person at SCC and two people at the vendor did this for a fraction of what Microsoft does work for. Trust me, a small fraction. It's not bad for the budget that we built it with. So, and I would challenge anybody who's never built software to build software that's bug free.
And it's also better than what we had before.
And
Exhibit D.
I will say that. I agree with that for sure.
Giving you a pop-up, you just can't see it.
Oh, I can see it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't want that. Oh, please go on. Track number is only required one, you can do it. See, I'm trapped by my own error tracker. It happens to me too. Okay. So we're asking for cost share. And the maintenance thing is dead because it's asking for cost share. And I'm going to say cost share. And I'm going to say, oops. And I'm going to say request. Boom. Gone. Actually, it's not gone because there's a pending request. Okay, on the maintenance cost share side, It doesn't care about the cost share type. I can click on that all day long because it's not a cost share request. It does want to know the date of first planting, and it's going to go to that little place, date of first planting, if there's more than one, because we do authorize maintenance on replants. So you got to tell me which planting we're associating this cost share with. And same thing, there's the amount. And request. And now they're sitting there waiting for you guys. Okay, that has now been logged in the system, and once a week, I get in on the program side. I'm not sure,
On Fridays.
usually on Fridays, but sometimes I take Fridays off, so I do it Thursday afternoon. And I have a list of all the requests that are ever made, and I can go to the status. And I can say equal to none. And filter. Oh, look, Courtney's project has 2 requests. Yes,
So, once you put in a maintenance request like that, when can you spend the money to do the maintenance?
after I've approved it,
Okay, so we need,
because then you're spending money without authorization.
okay, and, usually,
Like I say, I try to do them every Friday. I do them weekly. Usually Friday is my day afternoon before I check out for the weekend. If I'm taking Friday off.
okay,
I'm
We
good
get
Thursday.
an email from you, approval, right? Isn't there,
You get an approval, he'll tell you.
Yeah,
We're getting there. We haven't approved it yet. So, I can then go in and look at what you entered and look at your notes. And I can approve it or decline it right from here. If I decline, something doesn't look right, a maintenance amount, the contract date, and I will always type in, so I'm gonna decline one of these and approve the other one so you can see what happens. I will always put a note. Decline. Because. That's why. Okay, doesn't matter. Case doesn't matter today. And I will decline that. Okay. Now. I can close that one. And I can just straight approve the next one. See, it's gone because my filters are approved. And I would say, yeah, it looks good, approved, done. And I can put that one. And now, because my filter is for status of none, both of those have a status, approved and declined, I don't see anything. So before I get done on my approval day, I will say status is equal to, come on, move your window. Get out of it. Status is equal to decline.
On the very far left, like that flag, if you're there, that little tiny one, yeah. That'll,
Thank you. That will help. Decline, and I always have to filter the date is after or equal to, well, filter. Oh, look, there's the one I declined. And I will say, Courtney, you're gonna get a message. And I'm gonna get an email because I'm in the production system. I can notify the selected. When I hit notify selected, it goes to Courtney and it goes back to whoever requested it. Okay, so you know the status of what I did for that request. When I did it. And so now I'm going to switch my filter to, oops. Switch my filter to approve. Filters, and there's the one that I approved. And I will notify the selected, notification sent. And now back to the record.
you can spell
Oh, I misspelled it, that's fine. I don't have my glasses. Oh, I did it in the ID. See what happens sometimes when I can put you-
I feel like the people is sorry.
Yes.
Doesn't
Super is wonky, the angle is wonky.
look fun.
I haven't had enough coffee. Funding sources. Or hedgerows. Application declined. And if I screen over, I can actually open it, and it should have held the note. I didn't put the note in. Sweet. And then application approved, so your status is now, you're good to go. So we built this. This used to be a separate spreadsheet. And I would send the spreadsheet to finance and it was a mess. So hopefully this is a little bit easier in the last couple of years than previous. Because we built into the system. Is it perfect? No. However, it's been working really, really well, at least on the notification end. I'm seeing things, sometimes I know you have to rush jobs, send an email, hey, I just put in a request, I need it yesterday. I can get in and move that on. Questions on the behind stuff?
And so once you get that approval email,
Yes.
he said notify,
Yeah.
once you get that approval email in your inbox, that is your good to go. You can start incurring expenses after you get that email from Ryan. You don't have to wait for an official award notification from me like you do on other programs. As soon as he's approved that, it'll auto send you an email and you're good to spend money.
And on the vouchering side.
And then I'll amend the funds in and you'll get it, your finance person will get an email from me saying
And
that.
on the vouchering side, a copy of that comes with it or not? When they voucher, they need to provide that email?
No,
No.
no, so when
Okay.
you, I will send an official amendment, adding the funds into your grant to your financial person. It won't necessarily come down to the technician level, but you can ask them. But you will get the official notice because your email is already in here. So you can spend funds and then I'll amend it in. But when you voucher for the cost, you don't have to submit that. You already have that record in CPDS and on our end.
Is there somewhere we can go in and print a report that shows all of our authorizations?
There is a way to report, but that's a whole other.
Do it yourself.
I am putting together some videos, some meetings of, essentially meetings of one where I'm walking through how to do different things. I will do one on recording. I'm gonna do one very similar to what I just did here on request payment. So you're gonna start to see on the CPDF page and probably on the CREP page as well, especially the stuff that relates to CREP or how to request money. But you start to see a series of webinars of attendance on, or doing some of them, about how to do different little pieces within CPDS. So we're trying to get our training back up. So we haven't done anything for a couple years.
Brian, yeah, well, a couple of questions. On the report, real quick, it'd be great if you had 4 specific reports. And what my next question, I guess.
Once you build it, you can go back to it and read it.
Yeah, but I mean, just your guidance, because it is difficult using the report building tool. So I know we've been pretty bad at Whatcom about monitoring the balance and the maintenance and carrying it forward. Show us the most efficient way of doing that. I imagine a report would surely be nice, but we haven't got that far yet. So we have to go into and look at all the records, see what we want to carry through to the next, and whether it's the end of a funding. Yeah, okay.
So I don't have an easy way right now, the way it, when you voucher or before you make if you're into a record. So probably the easiest way is when you're into the record making the next request. Look at the funding that's been
Already approved.
already,
And you,
and enter the amount spent to date based on that you vouchered for against that request. That will then kick the calculator to tell you how much you have left.
yeah, so I mean, you'd have to have that readily available.
Yeah, so you have to have communication between your finance team and you guys.
Well, yourself, if you've got
I know, the whole
the
concept.
access databases that we use.
Yeah, so I did just work with our developer, not CPDS, but our financial developer. So every time, so Dawn sends in a payment now, every time she gets a spreadsheet back, the bottom half of the front page of that budget spreadsheet will now show every active prep contract you have with the approved balance and how much.
That shows the balance? Oh, I'll get together with Donna. There we go. Hey, that's the easiest, Brian. If we can just get that from our, if it's done, why do it?
Yeah, so
Okay,
every
That's-
month when we process that.
that
you can
would
ship it out to
be
your check.
very helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that,
when you're making a new request to give access to that, put in the final project cost against those previous to kick that calculator, because I'm gonna look at it and go, wait, this is the third one I've seen this year, I don't remember the exact amounts. But I'm
show,
gonna start to put two and two together and say,
can you show us that? What you're so talking about right now?
well, because it's asking, when you, in the request form, it's doing the calculation. So if
Okay,
I actually, what do we have? I have,
say you want some maintenance in the next
Yeah.
period, but there's a leftover of the $25. You only use 12.
yeah.
Okay,
So I'm gonna use 12 in the maintenance. Spent today.
okay. Okay.
And save. My safety.
So really, that would be a good step is to go back and put and populate that data. Yeah.
Oh. So I entered the changes about the amount spent per day. Now. The right one. 1350, yeah, 1355 is your total amount allowed, and notice because I spent.
Ah, okay, cool.
So it's built in.
And just while you're there, real quickly, I know, I think I've been doing it right, but for a replant, you actually create a new
Yep.
record. Yeah, you create a new record,
Yep.
right? Okay.
And so, and then when you ask for the maintenance funds, there would be more than one choice. You have a question? Or did you
You
get it?
answered it.
All right, any other questions on this boring adult stuff? Go ahead.
So one of the report things that you're gonna do will show all this, or Courtney, are you saying that the grant stuff that you're sending now shows all the maintenance remaining, the money remaining?
It shows every, so on the budget spreadsheet, you see them, right?
Yeah,
Below what your outcomes are, it will now show a big box with every single contract you have. Maintenance total, cost share total, amount spent to date for both of those total.
Of what I've approved,
okay.
of what's been approved and moved over, because what gets moved over ends up in the
It
finance.
just happened last month. Okay, you
Okay.
might have already seen one of those.
Yeah, we would love to have these two systems pop together, but we're trying.
Yeah.
Okay,
Ecology, that's right.
any other questions on this? Let's go to the fund. Okay. PowerPoint crew, I guess. And would you put my? Where did you put my? Yeah. Boring but necessary stuff. I get money on the bank of credit.
Brian,
Yes.
can we stack different practices in one contract, like if I have a area project and there's a connected
Because you're adding the BM to practice and the funding is gonna reflect the funding for that practice, so you just select the other practice and then.
yeah, and then with the FSA, those are just gonna be one contract or?
FSA knows that, they'll mix and match, this guy knows everything about mixing and matching practice types on contract. All right. This is the fun stuff, this is what makes the data guy rich. So some of you have been out with me in the fall, pulling tapes through recurring buffers and dodging hornets and trying not to trip on little stobs or tripping on little stobs and twisting your ankle. Don't ask me how I did that. But we finally are starting to see enough data coming through that we can start to look at some of the program structure and look at what we're learning and say, CREP is a great program. How can we make it better? Okay, I don't want to diminish the fact that what we're seeing in monitoring takes away from all the success that CREP has had. It's one of the longest running, one of the most successful programs in the state. What I'm hoping to cover is just really quickly the monitoring scheme for those that haven't been out with me and talk about some of the results we're seeing in the growth rates, the canopy, the invasive species, and I started doing some functional assessment this last year and what that means for adaptive management. So the monitoring scheme, essentially we're asking a hypothesis question in the monitoring. Because FSA's primary question is, we're paying for a crop. How well is that crop growing? So how do we do that? Well, we asked a hypothesis question that says the growth rates of plant types are drawn from the same population of everything else that we've measured on this side of the mountain. Because we don't really, that's our baseline, is every other planting previous to this one, right? So everything in the database. So each year the growth rate kind of changes a little bit because we add more data to that block of it compared to. And the alternative is this site is different from the growth rates that we've already measured. You know, so what's the standard for the growth rates, right? So the standard is everything else that we get. I randomly sample sites under contract. I get into the system. I pull out all the active contracts. I do Excel command equals ran, I think. And I assign a number. I rank them. I take the top 20 or 30. I usually select 30 because we're going to get to sites that don't monitor well. Within each site, we're going to randomly select bulk transect location from the edge of high water to the inner edge of the outer edge. And we're going to measure all the FSA plants within 10 feet of that tape to the species. Again, FSA is asking how well is our crop growing, not how well is the site doing. That's a different question.
Hasn't that question been reevaluated though? Yeah, like more of a functionality question? Okay.
And then I collapse the species information down to groups and then compare the groups, and I keep a running calculator in my field spreadsheet that does the stats for me so that I can monitor enough transects per site that I can characterize a site, but not so much that I spend hours and hours in the field. Okay. So I don't want to oversample. I don't want to undersample, but I don't want to oversample either because that's inefficient. I'm doing 20 to 30 sites a year. At each transect, we're looking at percent invasives, percent bank erosion, number of slides, midstream canopy for wadable streams. From the planted, that took me a couple of years to sort out. That wasn't clear in the methodology I inherited. So I don't have as much data there, but we'll get to that. So how are we doing? Well, for conifers on the east side of the mountains in blue, we're averaging a foot a year. Not bad. For the west side, for conifers, we're averaging a foot and a half a year. Not surprising, weather environment. Deciduous, we're foot and a half a year on the east and over 2 feet a year on the west. And for shrubs, about a foot and about a foot. The interesting thing to me with these numbers is the distribution. So you look at the count column. In the east side, we're growing 700 conifers, or we've measured 700 conifers. We've measured 139 deciduous and 2,000 shrubs. Guess what grows really well on the east side? Okay. The distribution is much more even on the west side with, 3,000, orders of magnitude similar counts within each type. And these numbers, these growth rates are pretty comparable in the literature when you look at them. Nothing super outstanding there. Couple standard deviations a little big, the deciduous on the west side, it's a pretty wide range. When you're talking about a growth rate of 2 and a standard deviation of 1.7. As far as our hypothesis, is the growth rate the same? And this is sites. Most of them are doing the same. Some of them are different. When you look at the actual growth rates, most of the time that difference is faster, growing faster than everything else that we've done. And then there's a few that for that group, the sample size is too small for that site, so out it goes. For canopy, so this is canopy from the planted trees. I've had 78 sites out of 97 that were either too deep away or no canopy from the project. That's like 80% of my sites. Of the 19 that I've actually measured canopy, we now see that at least half or 75% are better canopy. That's really good. Small streams, small wadable streams that I can get to that have canopy from the plantings. we're doing really well on. So small streams for sure, we're doing okay on. But we've got a lot of sites where we don't see the planting effects. Maybe it's a yet thing, I don't know. So I've kind of gotten a little bit of a twitch in me now that when I hear people say we need to do our riparian for canopy, I'm like, yeah, canopy's overrated, I think. The theory that CREP assumed is that we put in these trees and the trees have an angle to the sun that shades our water and we don't gain heat. And while you're going to say that's not all of the thermal equation going on, there's cool air underneath the trees that mixes with the warm air over the water. What I remember of my physics is that we have an air-to-air transfer from cold air to warm air, and then we have to have an air-to-water transfer to actually cool the water. Water has a high heat capacity and likes to hang on to it. I don't think that air interaction is as strong as a direct shade. Okay, so what do we see where it's not holding up? Well, number one, the existing trees that we leave on the project site are doing 90% of the shading. Okay, the plantings that we do contribute little or no. Here's an example. Those big trees are doing all of it, and there are some truck plants underneath here on the left, believe it or not. They're not contributing yet. Maybe the key word is yet, I don't know. The other place we see this is in incisions. The incision itself does most of the shading. So we have an incised system and no trees, we put some trees in. It was already being shaded because it's down 30 feet in a 30 feet deep channel that's 10 feet wide, and it was getting all its shade from the walls of the incision. This site, the site, believe it or not, there is a project on the left. We already have lots of existing vegetation at the bottom of the incision anyway, and the incision is way down and we're not getting a lot of benefit from that project.
But the CREP wasn't on the right, was it? You're saying that was non-CREP on the right?
That was CREP on the right.
Or wasn't it? Oh, failed.
The other reason we see this is that some of our low flow channels are so far removed from where we're planting the project, we're not getting the effect. It might work great at, I mean, the shade effect might be there at high water, but that's not when we're gaining temperature. We gain temperature in August and early September and October. And we're just not close enough to the water to really get the effect on. So in this case, you have CREP on both sides, and you can see that channel definitely moving away on the right. And that the benefit of that buffer is declining as that stream moves. And then lastly, we're putting some buffers on really large bodies of water, and that's that heat capacity thing where water is really trying to hang on to its heat. And the ability to get trees that are significantly acting on that body of water and shading it is mature forest on the other side of the Okanagan. And that thing's just sitting there in the gravel baking all afternoon long, all summer long. And I don't know that a riparian buffer is really helping our stream temperatures a whole lot.
No, but I mean, are you implying that it should not have been planted? We don't need a buffer?
I'm saying the benefit that we're deriving.
Well, right, the one aspect,
Everybody says
one
buffers
aspect.
because it controls temperature. No,
Okay,
that's for sure.
sure.
Okay,
But there are
other benefits.
benefits, right?
So shifting to invasive species, I'm a very visual data person. I like to look at my data before I start doing statistics on it. So this is simple histogram with bins of percent invasive species per transect. So this is now sites, not, or transects, not sites. And then I run a cumulative line through, which is the orange line. And as we approach, the way you use these is you can go on either graph and run up your line and across and learn something. So if I run up to 50%, or if I run up to 25% invasive species, I go up to that cumulative line, I find that half my sites have less than 25% invasive. That's great. Flip side to that conversation, half my sites have more than 25% invasive species. That's not so good, guys.
Including Himalayan blackberries and reed canary grass. Okay,
Everything.
well,
So
that's
the next thing that says, well, all of these are the mature sites because we made an assumption that the CREP buffer, as it grows, shades and outcompetes its competition. Therefore, we're only paying maintenance for 5 years. And these are all the young sites. So I said, okay, let's look by growing season. I can't put a line through that. I cannot put a line through that. I can kind of infer some things like less than 5 years fairly low because we're paying for maintenance, and then we start to lose it as the maintenance stops. And then eventually you start to clear day on, and at very old sites, we start getting a handle on it. That's just an inference. I don't know, because that's where the dots lay, okay? But, and this is a fairly small subset. This is just a pair of years that I analyzed together, just because I wrote the report together, because 2020 was a COVID year, and FSA didn't want to report that year. So the assumption that 5 years of maintenance is enough to control weeds on these sites may not be holding up. Maybe we need to do maintenance longer.
To get to where you are just above 20
Yeah,
right there,
yeah.
faster.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, I mean, with limited budget, it's a give and take,
Well,
right?
that was an
But I would
assumption
just
that
say,
we're gonna get
okay.
set up. That was an assumption we made.
But we're getting there.
I know.
We've got sites that are now re-enrolled 3 times.
I know.
And they are, the reed canary grass and the blackberries are really thinned out.
I'll
So
get
we're
to that.
getting there. It's just,
I'll get to that. Hang on.
okay, well,
So part of me in the back of my mind says, well, FSA's question is nice, but it's FSA's question. I'm more interested in how is the buffer doing as a whole. So I started looking for some ways to do some functional assessments quickly. And as that jumped to the top of the list, it's not perfect. It's for small streams. It's semi-quantitative. It puts things in bins based on visual observations. On 16 functions, the bins you assign numbers to, you get bins on a scale from 1 to 10. I use 11 of the 16 function questions because those might apply to buffer functions. And I wanted to consider the whole site. So here's the pieces I used. I have seen some of these lower ones have, or, you know, fish habitat complexity. You're gonna go, well, that's not a buffer function. Well, yes, it is. Stuff falls in the river and creates pool structures and other things. So these are the elements I used. And here's kind of some of the sites we saw. Diversity. Nope.
well, some of the
Invasive
trees
species?
start dying.
Invasive.
We have snags now, lots of snags.
Another, they're live on the top. You just have an actually in
Well,
Canada.
okay, but
Really nice buffer. No stream channel. No stream channel functions at all. Wayne, you know that site. We were there together.
yeah,
Basic species
on the edge,
on the edge.
always, you'll always have that.
Here's our former executive director standing in the field of scrap trees and lots of reed canary grass. More mixture of invasive species. So generally what we found was more invasive species. This is the channel. And I'll get to the scores in a minute. Here's a nice buffer with not very good channel conditions. Thank you, culvert replacement. I've been saying since we've gone on our culvert replacement binge to be careful because we're changing the hydraulic limiter because it acts as a throttle, and then we remove that throttle and send gushers of water downstream. Yeah, this was a nice channel until that happened.
What exactly did you say happened
So
there?
when you have a culvert,
Yeah,
the volume of that culvert limits the peak hydraulic flow.
so culvert was removed
So
upstream,
culvert was removed, and now 3 times the volume of water is coming down that same channel.
right? And also, these sites are almost all agricultural. And the channel is not part of CREP, so we don't have that much control over it.
Well, that's
The
why.
the drainage improvement districts, the farmers will keep that channel clear. So when you look at a site like that, yeah, maybe the debris naturally is not there, but I suspect that it's been kept. Out, you know, that if they find a what we would want for fish, a large pile of debris in there, they would go in and remove it.
Functional assessment of buffers.
Yeah, exactly. I agree completely.
As a whole.
I agree
Okay.
completely. We need to look at it
We're gonna
differently.
have some invasive species. The trees themselves are growing really well. It's really good on the CREP data. But the site performance data is starting to fall apart. So where did we score? I just started doing this last year, so it's only 20 sites. Functioning, remember I said there's 7. And so, less than 7. What this doesn't tell me is where these sites started. They might have all started at 3. I don't know. But over a range of age of sites, we're still seeing that we're missing some function. How do we do that? Some of those issues, the ones that tended to score in this stage, were missing some component, either the in-string component or they were excelling at the invasive species component. Okay, yeah, good. So, some things to think about from a functional perspective. What are we trying to do, and how do we get there, and are we doing the right thing?
How was the age of, maybe I'm missing it.
This was across the age of.
Oh,
This is all ages of sites that I.
all kinds of ages, okay,
Some of these could still be young.
yeah,
And
well, that's what I
moving-
was getting
moving
at.
This way,
Okay.
it's a snapshot, so don't
Sure,
put too much in it, but.
well, my point is that age is a big factor,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
huge.
at the same time, this is a sampling of what I measured this year. And this is what we're seeing, and I think this year wasn't an unusual year compared to what I've done before. So we grow trees really well. I think we need to get better at the connection between the project and the stream. Especially to get that canopy shade feature going. We're definitely doing well on small wadable streams. So if I have a limited funds and I want to influence stream temperature, I should be working on a smaller stream. More so than the bigger stream. I think we can do better at weed management and site prep for longer duration, because the assumption that 5 years is enough just doesn't seem to be bearing out. Maybe it needs to be for 20 years. And we definitely, if we want in-stream functions, we need to work on it because we're not getting it right now. So adaptive management. Adaptive management is a good group of change. And we don't like to change very much as a species. I would like to consider a more holistic approach and not just a buffer program. One, it gets us away from the B word that likes to go to prepare on fire. And 2, we can include some in-stream activity where it's needed to really get the habitat. So we don't get beautiful recurrent habitat and no channel habitat. We'll go together and build a package. I would like to allow or encourage changes in hydrology in the plant community because from the day I got here, it's like, hey, we're planting the beaver's field of dreams. Build it and they will come. Why are we fighting it? Let it happen. Beaver habitat makes great coho factories. So we can encourage PDAs and we can encourage patching this, which is a natural function in our assessment and evaluation of how well our buffers are doing. We need to think about the width that we're doing. One of my thoughts would be that we vary the minimum width based on the bank hole width. That way, a small stream doesn't get an excessively large buffer, and a big stream that needs a big buffer gets a big buffer. So we can do some things like that. And lastly, I think we need to do some more aggressive weed management. Now, what that looks like. Question, I saw a hand.
Yeah, there's a big discussion in our district right now between herbicide and plastic. I'm just wondering where you stand on that.
What I saw in the sites I measured, because they're all lumped in with in that functional assessment. When you see plastic used in a strip, you do not get the connection to the stream. You do not get you get a lot of invasive species between your plastic. So your functional assessments put a low number on invasive species and a low number on shade. You typically end up with about 3 species. So your diversity starts to plummet, and you just don't get the quality metric that you see in a more randomly planted type planting design. So that's my thoughts on plastic. Plastic used just as a mulch around randomly planted trees would probably be the benefit of the plastic without the downsides of the lack of connection and the invasive species and some other things. So some consequences of adaptive management and change. Maybe some of the sites we're allowing practices on, we won't allow them. Hard pill to swallow, I know, but if we're not getting there and we have limited funds to spend, we spend our funds on the hard sites or do we spend our funds on the easy sites? I don't know. Some practices that we're doing now, we do a reduced rate or we decide we're not gonna fund them. Filter strip alone, competition back. Our plannings, under plannings, I know we've planted a lot of conifer underneath really functioning streams that otherwise do really, really well. And the answer is, we're not seeing the benefit. Maybe the answer is not yet. It's gonna take 50 or 100 years to see the benefit, right?
Exactly.
But should that be a top dollar planting the same as somebody that has a bare field right next to the stream that's getting baked?
But what if we know if the life of the existing hardwood stand is a pioneering species and in 50 years it's gonna be gone and then,
It could be a verification plan.
okay.
But the monitoring that I'm seeing today.
Yeah, it
doesn't tell
is.
that story, okay,
It's,
so that's my thoughts on taking a 20-year program and continuing to do the same thing, expecting different results. Okay,
just want to comment. Brian, I totally agree with a lot of your summary there,
yeah,
but what I'm feeling like is it's not FSA compatible and
well,
not CREP compatible. So if we're looking at either remodel the program or,
so let's separate the technical pieces
okay, from the political.
administrative pieces. And
Exactly.
work on both together.
Yeah.
That's what I got. I saw the first one back there.
So could there be a possibility of like, if you wanted to emphasize more like connectedness to the stream, could you start maybe implementing like largely degree projects into the funding? That's trying
The
to
in-stream practice, getting the in-stream practice to get the in-stream functions up. So you don't have just a buffer with a stream channel that has no functions. Yeah, absolutely, perfect.
And you can use equipment. They have for sand and.
Yeah, we can use equip, we could build it in. I mean, my initial conversations with FSA is the technical stuff we can address. So if we wanted to spend the state contribution on in-stream and they wanted to pay for the buffer, that could probably be done. From a technical side. Grant?
I was, might have missed it, but for some of those adaptive management, like the tarp and filter strip and stuff, are those things that you all are thinking about in like conversations, or are they things that are already sort of in the works?
No, just thinking about, because they're not measuring up on the functional system side. And if we're really trying to, the purpose of the CREP is to, it's the wording in the contract, the exact wording, so it's really specific. Minimize some of the effects of agriculture on listed species, okay? That's a little wishy-washy, I get it, but at the same time, are we doing as much as we can to help a listed species with just a buffer planting if we're missing the instrument? Or is our approach for buffer function not getting to the level that we need it to be
In the amount of time,
in the amount of time? And that's short of it.
short,
So
exactly.
Maybe I'm just not knowing everything, but just thinking, you were talking about more of like the stream function and the riparian function and like some of those things with, okay, we also plant at essentially the same time, which equals the long term of an even age tree stand. Like, is there some talks about if we do extend this, thinking about like, you know, coming in and having those different plants so that you have different age classes and different, like maybe objectives that are within
the agility
the.
of the plant throughout the life and introduce age strings, getting the plants that you put in initially to set the stage succession for the next plants, like. Where or our previous speaker on the pole thing, let's put in a willow cottonwood forest and get the Greek canary grass out. And then use the changes that those early successional species create to create habitat conditions favorable. Eastern Washington, plant the willows within 15 feet of the stream and walk away, and then plant the next 10 feet once those are 20 feet tall. Because now your water table's coming up and that next 20 feet is available, where it's like rock hard and bone dry without the willows there, right? So allowing succession to happen, being able to put in BEAs and just letting things flood for a while as beavers start to move in and occupy, and then planting those margins. Working more with succession rather than trying to cram succession into a 2-year window and looking at our, it's not a crystal ball, it's like a copper ball, it's a bad reflection, right? Of how things are gonna look in 20 years. That's not necessarily a great planning device.
And you can help succession, release thinning on the west side. And I have started to experiment with that. It's a tough one to get money for, but doing an herbicide, release thinning is what we did. And, it's kind of an experiment. See how I think it's been really successful, actually.
This is after you mentioned 20 years back and I'm looking at, there was a plan to do that about 20 years ago, I was still in.
Yeah.
And the trees like are really high density under us, stand clearly thinned out. And so what I did that I had was you go through and just cut down like half the trees and then throw them in channel to create the street habitat. But it also means taking out that nice canopy that's been created. It's like, again, I'm new to conservation districts, so. I don't know, is there opportunities or like, is that even something that you would fund or?
CREP is pretty tightly structured. I think there's probably ways to get it done. There's definitely ways to get it done mixing funds.
Mid-contract management is supposed to
Yeah.
fund thinning, but
Yeah,
to get FSA to agree to that,
yeah, I know.
we need help,
I
Brian.
know. But thinning, but not necessarily thinning and then letting a bunch of light in and watching the blackbird.
No, you gotta
right?
do it
So you gotta go in and reestablish your patch.
and
But
leaving
for me, it's
state, yeah,
more about allowing patchiness to occur because patchiness is a natural function.
exactly. Exactly. And standing snags are good, so you don't necessarily have to lay them on the ground, which is more expensive. You could actually girdle trees.
Yeah.
And that's a much cheaper way to do some thinning.
So are there some people in the room that use like CREP to kind of start it and then have other grants or funding sources that do some of that, like billing to like,
CREP is a 10 to 15-year contract, so
yeah,
getting that kind of vision in a project is challenging. To leverage programs that way. There may be others that have other experiences. I know the attractive part of CREP to the landlord is paying them a rental check every year. And stepping away from that, so using CREP to get it started and then stepping away is
But
all we're talking about.
it seems logical that you could,
you have 2 years, you're planting, you're doing that. And then you're maybe coming in with another funding source to say, hey, you know, maybe this didn't work as much, or like I'm trying to meet some other objectives in this project or do some in-stream work as well to also bolster some of those other objectives that you're talking about that CREP doesn't fund.
Yep.
and you could do that, couldn't you? If you could find funding.
You'd have to find the funding.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of a.
The other
Yeah.
tricky piece in our business is that y'all don't get it, but the commission gets a lot is how much money do you need? How much does riparian restoration per acre? If we want to restore 10,000 acres, how much money does that cost? Well, if I only have the prep program costs, I'm going to send them a low number.
I just sent you a big number.
I know, that's fine, that's fine, but there are places that do not tell me about the other money that went into that site that's contributing to that bucket. And so we've got to get better at capturing all of the costs to do riparian restoration and putting it all in one place so we can tell the story, hey, we need this much money and make it a realistic number. And because every time I get asked, I know it's an undershoot because I'm not seeing a complete undershoot.
Yeah, I looked at the contract, they gave you a bill that was like twice the amount as like what the CREP, and I had to go back and forth with them because I would say, I know you guys are eating so much of this cost, like I want to show the commission. So just so you
I
wait.
know. I know. Well, that's the other part of this, you know. Perhaps 20 years ago, I mean, the whole other side of the technical conversation, you know, the monitoring piece is, does the program structure that worked 25 years ago still continue to work? And do we need to actively manage the program structure as well? That's our conversation. So, Yeah.
When you find, when you figure out what you are looking to monitor for in CREP, projects, will you be, requesting districts utilize, those types of, monitoring techniques? For CREP projects?
I do the monitoring for CREP, so I borrow technician, some of them that's been out with me lots. We've got various dodging permits and tripping.
For the whole state?
For the whole state, yeah, but I'm monitoring a subset, we have 800 contracts now, and I'm monitoring 20 to 30 a year over time, and I'm monitoring, it's not meant to be an extensive delve into for the status, it's over time, what do we see? And so now, since I've been doing it regularly since 2014, we have a big enough set of data that starts to tell us story, tell us something. So that's the difference between monitoring and more intensive evaluation, like a research type thing. So
Are we gonna
we
start?
chip away at it and start to get some insight into how the program is functioning as a hopefully convey.
And functionality of the buffer, we're gonna start looking at that more.
Yeah, I like it. It tells the whole story better.
I do have a fundamental question about the monitoring that's been going on, and also like to note that FSA has never looked at that data. They just admitted that recently, that they don't even
Probably.
bother. Why are we
But it
focused?
is- but it
Okay,
is proving useful in the conversations with them about the changes we need to make and where we're getting, are we getting where we want to go?
okay,
That's been helpful.
yes. Why are we so focused on growth rate? I mean, we know we have a variety of sites. I mean, there's a middle part. We've got some really bad sites. We've got some great sites. Why does growth rate matter?
It's FSAs.
I know it was, and now they don't look at the data.
I know.
It's irrelevant to me. I'm not irrelevant, but it's just not worth the
Welcome
time.
to the world of.
SVAP would be a far better way to look at these buffers.
Welcome to the world of marketing.
Waste the time.
What else you got? That's all I have, thanks.
Brian.